5 spine-chilling tales of truckers cursed by sinister forces, forbidden secrets revealed. The diner, flickering like a dying star amid shadows and pine trees, buzzed with the low hum of conversation amongst 5 seasoned truckers. They gathered in a booth, warmth radiating from their steaming coffee cups, but beyond the cracked windows, the night whispered secrets that made their skin crawl. Jack, weary and hollowed by the grind of the road, leaned in, his heart racing. "You ever felt some watching you on those empty stretches?" he asked, eyes darting toward the darkness outside. "Yeah," grunted Rob, a big guy known for his raucous laughter. But tonight his voice wavered. "There's a legend about Route 13. People seen things out there. Ghosts, apparitions, lost souls." He paused, swallowing hard. "I even had a box once, marked with a warning not to take it, but I couldn't resist." A chill settled in the diner, creeping into their bones as they shared stories of flickering headlights that weren't from any truck, and mysterious figures slipping between the trees. They spoke in hushed tones of shrieks echoing in the night, and pallid faces pressed against windows, faces that weren't supposed to be there. Each tale was like a black hole sucking warmth from the air, leaving only dread behind. "Ever hear the one about the bridge?" asked Mike, his hands trembling around his mug. "The one that shifts? I swear I was crossing it late one night when it felt like something pulled me back. I could see shadows moving, felt a cold breeze, and then silence." As they exchanged stories, the lights flickered, and a deep dread enveloped them. It crept around the edges of their laughter, threatening to swallow them whole. Jack could feel his pulse quicken as Rob paled at the mention of that cursed box. Before they could dive deeper into the terror, the front door creaked open, unleashing a gust of icy air that sent a shiver through them all. The old-timers locked eyes, exchanging expressions of knowing fear, while the less experienced leaned in, hearts racing. They had heard of the things that lingered just outside the realm of their reality. Before they knew it, Rob was gone, the sound of his laughter fading into a void. Jack's stomach churned. He felt the floor beneath him pulse, the diner now a claustrophobic trap. Tires screeching outside echoed like a death knell, and the howl of an approaching truck felt twisted, wrong, a living testament to their impending doom. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. The remaining 4 felt the burden of their trucker lives heavy on their chests. Their voices tinged with panic, and whispers of past mistakes swirled in the air. In that moment of uncertainty, a fresh chill cascaded around them, and the diner felt like it was closing in, walls trembling with a sinister energy. Then, words began to etch themselves into the foggy diner window. "The road demands a price." As their eyes widened in horror, they realized their fates were intertwined with that of the roads and the dreaded cargo they had once transported. The heavy footsteps sounded closer now, and their hearts raced with visceral terror. Would they confront the darkness within, or succumb to the chilling grip of the unknown as they remained captive in the diner, tangled in spirits of their own making? The diner fell into an eerie silence, the kind that wrapped its icy fingers around their throats. Mike glanced around, his discomfort evident. What if Rob had taken? His voice trembled as eyes turned toward the darkened entryway. "Not possible," Jack muttered, trying to sound brave.
But deep inside, a cold knot of fear twisted tighter. He was just right here. Maybe he needed to fill up on gas or something. The moment he said it, he regretted it. Gas stations were like rabbit holes at night, often leading nowhere good. Suddenly, a loud crash erupted from the back of the diner, rattling dishes and sending mugs skidding off the table. The truckers jolted, hearts pounding in their chests. Jack's breath caught in his throat. "Did you guys see that?" he whispered, eyes wide. The others nodded, fear rendering them speechless. Mike was the first to move, edging toward the kitchen doors. His footsteps were hesitant, like he was expecting something, someone, to bolt out at him. "I'll check it out," he called, but there was no conviction in his voice. The shadows around him seemed to press closer as he disappeared through the swinging doors. Outside, the wind howled, sending a draft that rattled the glass. It felt as though the very essence of the diner was shifting, time itself warping with every tick of the clock. Jack's heart raced. He felt a presence, like a storm brewing just out of sight. The diner was still, too still. "Stay close," whispered Linda, her eyes darting from the windows to the entrance. "Whatever's out there, we can't let it in." The swarm of whispered fear surfaced again. Ghosts, wretched souls longing for release. Stories they had shrugged off in daylight now felt dangerously real. Moments dragged on, heavy like thick fog. Jack surged toward the kitchen doors, panic surging through him. "Mike," he called, but his voice sounded weak even to him. The others followed closely behind as dread deepened. Suddenly, a scream pierced the air, a horrible guttural shriek that fired through their veins like ice. "Oh God, what the hell was that?" Jack's voice broke, fear morphing him.
I don't know," Linda stammered, eyes wide. They huddled together, a trembling cluster of anxiety. Mike burst through the kitchen door, his face pale as a sheet. "It's not safe. We have to get out." Before he could say another word, the glass door swung open, and in staggered a figure cloaked in darkness. All they could see was a silhouette, but the way it moved sent chills racing down Jack's spine. The unmistakable scent of decay filled the air, thick and rancid, wrapping around them like a vine. "What do you want?" screamed Rob's voice, echoing from the back, panic lacing his words. The figure paused, its head tilting slightly, as if weighing its options. Jack's pulse hammered in his ears. He could barely breathe. This was beyond any legend, beyond any story they had shared. "Run!" cried Mike, and they didn't hesitate. They bolted past the ghastly figure, slamming into the diner's exit, hearts racing and blood pounding. The cold night air enveloped them, drawing them into the darkness, but there was no refuge in the shadows. As they stumbled away from the diner, Jack's heart dropped as he turned back. The lights flickered and died, leaving only the glow of the moon, shining on a now empty diner. But something shifted behind the glass, a pale face pressed against the window, seeming to scream without sound. "Where do we go?" gasped Linda, breathless and desperate. "What's chasing us?" The road stretched out before them, a long, dark ribbon that twisted into the unknown. The others looked to Jack for answers, but all he felt was an overwhelming dread. The road was calling them in a way he had never experienced. And then, through the silence, came a whisper, soft yet urgent, echoing all around them. "You will pay." What price would they pay for their ignorance? Would this night ever end? The haunting wails of what waited for them on the open road echoed in his mind as they fled into the dark. The shadows were a living thing, twisting and shifting like pale fingers reaching for them. Jack forced himself to move, but every step forward felt like an invitation for something behind to catch up. Panic clawed at his throat. As he glanced back at the diner, the pale face remained, its mouth gaping in a silent scream, eyes wide and hollow.
"Keep running!" Mike shouted, the urgency in his voice shattering the stillness around them. They stumbled forward, breathless and disoriented, the night air sharp and cold against their skin. Linda let out a choked sob. "What was that thing?" she gasped. "I don't know," Jack replied, his heart pounding in sync with the wild rhythm of their footsteps. "But we can't let it find us." They dashed along the dark road, the only sound their ragged breathing and the soft crunch of gravel beneath their shoes. Lights from a distant truck illuminated the path for fleeting moments, casting eerie shadows that danced like demons at the periphery of
their vision. "Look!" Mike pointed to a speck of light ahead. It flickered like a lighthouse in the storm, the gas station they had passed. They sprinted toward it, desperate for safety, for sanctuary. As they reached the station, the fluorescent lights buzzed and flickered, struggling against the encroaching night. The gnawing feeling of dread returned, mingling with hope. They rushed inside, slamming the door behind them and locking it tight. "Did we lose it?" Linda panted, her eyes darting to the windows. Jack pressed himself against the door, trying to catch his breath, but the unease didn't lift. I don't think so." His voice trembled. The gas station attendant stood behind the counter, his face pale, eyes wide with fear. "What happened out there?" he asked, glancing anxiously between them and the door. "We saw something horrible." Mike ran a hand through his hair, his voice cracking under the tension. "We need to call the police." The attendant shook his head. "Phones are down. Everything's been acting strange since night fell." "Strange?" Jack asked, his stomach tightening. "Yeah, it's as if something is blocking signals. People have gone missing. It's not safe out there," the attendant warned, his voice low. As if on cue, the lights in the station flickered again, plunging the room into darkness for a heartbeat. The terrified gasps of his friends filled the void. Then they flickered back on, but it wasn't just the lights that had changed. Outside, the figure was there. The shadow they had fled stood against the gas station's glass, the moonlight casting it in an even more sinister light. Jack's breath hitched. It had followed them. "No!" Linda screamed, backing away. "What do we do?" "Stay quiet," Mike hissed. "Maybe it won't see us." They pressed against the counter, backs against cold metal, too afraid to make a sound. But silence was broken by a soft tapping against the door. A chilling rhythm, deliberate and haunting. The shadow tilted its head, as if it sensed their fear. Jack could feel its presence worming its way into his mind, whispering horrors he didn't want to hear. The attendant shook his head slowly, fear flooding his features. "It knows you're here," he said, voice trembling. "It's hungry for souls." Suddenly, the lights flickered again, and the door rattled. Panic surged through Jack. They had to do something. They couldn't hide forever. "Run!" he finally shouted, adrenaline crashing over him like waves. They bolted for the back exit, desperate to escape the shackles of their fear. But they weren't out of danger yet. As they pushed through the door, Jack turned back just in time to see the figure lunging forward. It was impossibly fast, a blur of darkness racing toward them. What would they face next? With the creature in tow, would their escape be short-lived, or would they uncover the truth behind this cursed nightmare? The only sound in the stark silence ahead was their frantic breaths, but somewhere in the distance, a voice echoed chillingly.
"You can't outrun your fate!" They crashed through the back door, the night wrapping around them like a thick, suffocating blanket. Jack stumbled, the ground uneven beneath his feet, hard gravel cutting against his skin. Heart racing, he flung himself forward, dragging Linda and Mike with him. They could hear it, the shadow's relentless pursuit, a whisper of wind behind them that promised doom. "Go, go!" Mike yelled, his voice a harsh rasp. Each footfall felt heavier now. Fear knotted Jack's stomach, making it hard to breathe. They dodged around the gas station, adrenaline pushing them to run faster. But where? The road stretched forever before them, swallowed by darkness. Flickering lights from above barely penetrated the gloom.
They were alone, and they could feel the emptiness closing in. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed in the distance. Jack skidded to a stop, turning back to the entrance. The gas station looked innocent enough, but the figure was gone. Had it stopped? Had it found its way inside? He exchanged glances with Linda and Mike, dread pooling in their eyes. "Let's check around the side," Jack whispered, barely audible over the thrumming in his ears. They crept along the side of the station, shadows dancing in the dim lights above. Anxiety clawed at Jack's back. As they turned the corner, they spotted it, a poorly lit alley leading behind the station, a sliver of hope in the growing darkness. But then another noise rose from the shadows, a voice that dripped with malice. "You think you can hide?" Their hearts dropped in unison. That voice, it was closer than before. Whatever hunted them was not just a shadow, it was aware. The fear erupted into sheer panic. Jack caught Linda's arm, pulling her closer as they fled down the alley, desperation fueling their flight. He could hear Mike's breath hitch behind him, could feel the powerful pull of terror in the air. Trees loomed ahead, their gnarled branches swaying in the wind like skeletal hands. "Just a little further," he gasped, his legs burning. The woods were an option, dark and treacherous, but seemingly safer than facing that thing again. They slipped into the trees, losing sight of the gas station's flickering lights. I can't," Linda gasped, groaning as she leaned against a tree trunk. Shadows blotted out the ground beneath her, and she looked about to crumble. "I know," Jack spat. "We can't stop. It's right behind us." "Is it?" Mike's voice was barely a whisper, laden with dread. They stood in a small clearing, breaths mingling with the cold night air. Jack strained to listen. For a moment, all he could hear was the rustling of leaves, then the trickle of water. But silence never lasted long. Jack dared to peer back, scanning the brush. Did he see movement? A shiver ran down his spine. "We need to find somewhere to hide," he urged, scanning their surroundings. He felt exposed, every instinct screaming to flee. Without warning, a rustling erupted just beyond their vision. Jack's heart raced as they crouched lower, fear tightening around them like a vice. The rustling stopped, replaced by a bone-chilling silence. Then a low, guttural growl emanated from the darkness. "Run!" Jack bellowed, adrenaline pouring through him again. They darted deeper into the woods, branches snagging at their clothes, slicing their skin. The growl faded, but the sense of pursuit never left him. Just as they found a thicket thick enough to hide, Mike grabbed Jack's shoulder, eyes wide with terror. "What if it knows where we are? What if it's already found us?" From the depths of the woods, a voice echoed, a mocking laughter that crushed Jack's resolve. "You can't escape. It's time to face your fate." Heavy breaths trembled within Jack's chest. They had nowhere left to run, yet something primal urged them to keep going. Would the answer to their horror be a surrender to the darkness, or could they find a way to fight back? The weight of dread pressed as they searched for the next move, not knowing that the realization of their choices was lurking in the shadows, stalking them closer than ever. The wind howled through the trees, carrying whispers that coiled around Jack's mind, feeding his fear. He could almost feel the laughter, a cruel, sinister laughter, as it wrapped around them in the darkness. Every moment felt stretched, as if time itself knew their plight and played with their sanity. "Shh!" Linda hissed, her voice trembling. What was that? Jack held up a hand, straining to listen. The sound of leaves rustling echoed in the night, but the cruel laughter remained, haunting and relentless. He wished he could just shut his eyes and pretend it was all a nightmare, that they were safe, somewhere, anywhere but here. Do you think it's gone?" Mike's breath hitched as his grip on Jack's shoulder tightened. Jack shook his head, his heart pounding. "No way. We have to keep moving."
Just beyond the thicket, shadows danced like phantoms, jagged forms moving with a purpose. Jack could feel them, feel the darkness pressing in, testing their resolve. He motioned for them to follow him deeper into the woods, where the trees grew thicker, the air heavier. They stumbled through the underbrush, every snap of a twig sending fresh waves of fear through them. Jack's thoughts raced. What did they know about their predator? Was it human? An apparition? The growl they heard felt primal. An instinct screamed at him that they weren't merely being stalked. They were ensnared in a web of pure malevolence. Suddenly, a shrill scream sliced through the midnight air. It wasn't far. Jack froze. "Did you hear that?" "Yes." Linda's face blanched. "What was that? It came from over there." She pointed to an opening in the trees, trepidation in her eyes. As much as dread gripped Jack, they had to know. Whatever lurked in the shadows would find them eventually. In small, deliberate steps, they edged toward the noise. Each straining step felt like an eternity.
Then they saw it. A flicker of movement. A figure darted between the trees. A flash of white clashing against the night. Jack squinted to get a better look, hoping against hope it wasn't what he feared. But then the figure stumbled, falling to the ground with a heavy thump. "Are they hurt?" Mike whispered, his voice barely above a breath. "I don't know," Jack started, but the moment hung heavily, casting doubt. Should they investigate? The terrifying thoughts rushed back, reminding him of the growl, of the voice that had taunted them. What if it was a trap? The flickering figure groaned, "Help me!" It was raw, desperate, and echoed through the trees. "Please, help!" "Damn it," Jack hissed, a mix of concern and dread gripping him. Something in him wanted to sprint away, to take Linda and Mike far from this madness. But then again, what if it was genuinely someone in danger? What if they could turn the tide, find safety together? "He's hurt," Mike said, his eyes wide with uncertainty. "What if it's trying to lure us?" "It could be a trick," Linda warned, her voice barely masking her fear. But the sound of pain from beyond the thicket clawed at her heart. As uncertainty swirled, they couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of eyes boring into them from the woods. The haunted laughter returned, higher now, intermingling with the cries. "We need to get out of here, now!" Jack blurted, grabbing both their wrists. But before he could pull them away, another voice broke through, drowning the others. "You can't turn back, or you'll face the wrath of the dark." The woods seemed to shudder as the wind howled louder, feeding their fears. Jack felt terror clawing at his throat. They had a choice to make: chase the unknown figure and risk falling into whatever trap awaited, or retreat back into the eerie shadows, knowing that whatever hunted them was close behind. "Do we go?" he asked, heart hammering. Linda swallowed hard. "We're not safe anywhere." In that moment of hesitation, the woods crackled with ominous energy. Jack's gut twisted with dread as darkness swallowed the clearing whole, leaving them trembling between hope and despair. And just as they were about to move, a shriek pierced through the air, a wild, tortured scream that exploded into the night, overwhelming everything. Jack's gaze hardened. "We have to do something, now!" His resolve solidified, but the weight of uncertainty clung to the air like the fog that rolled through the trees. They moved in sync, creeping toward the figure, fear and adrenaline igniting their weary limbs. But every instinct urged them to run. How would they face what awaited them? Was it too late for choices now? And if they found the figure, what would they discover? Questions spiraled as they ventured into the unknown, reality shifting with each step, a sinister fate lurking just around the corner. The air grew thicker as they pressed forward, each step weighted by dread. Jack led the way, forcing his shaky legs to move amidst the chaos swirling in his mind. The flickering figure remained just within reach, tantalizing yet terrifying. "Please!" the figure wheezed again, more strained this time, puncturing the night with desperation. "Help! I can't breathe! I can't!" Linda's grip tightened on Jack's arm. "This isn't right. We shouldn't." "Just a little closer," Jack insisted, the magnetism of the cries pulling him deeper into the woods despite the warnings clawing at him. Leaves crunched beneath their feet, the sound swallowed by the oppressive darkness. Shadows stretched and morphed around them, darting in the corners of their vision like hungry predators. Jack forced himself to look ahead, fighting back panic, but all he could see was the paleness of the figure looming dangerously close. "Are you okay?" he called, his voice sounding small and fragile in the vastness of the night. A pained gasp echoed, chilling him to the core. "They're coming! They're—" The air exploded as a deafening roar split the tranquility, shaking the very ground beneath them. Jack stumbled backward wide-eyed. The laughter erupted all around them, now a cacophony, each note sharper than a knife. It surrounded them, invading their senses, wrapping around their throats like a noose. "Run!" Linda screamed, instinctively pulling Jack away. But Mike didn't move. He stood frozen, his gaze glued to the ground ahead. "Jack, look!" There, in the shadows, grotesque forms began to materialize, twisting and coiling around the figure's outstretched arm. They moved like smoke, unfurling with malevolence, flickering between reality and nightmare. Each iteration of the shadows distorted the landscape, breaking the very essence of safety. "We can't leave him," Mike choked out, battling against primal instincts. But something primal ignited in Jack's mind. "Are you out of your mind? We can't help him. We don't even know what that thing is." His heart raced, pounding against the confines of his chest, feeding the terror coursing through his veins. "Please," the figure cried once more, its voice trembling on the brink of breaking. "You must listen. They'll come for you too." Jack's vision narrowed, the figure blurring at the edges, mixing with the shadows creeping ever closer. The laughter crescendoed, a haunting symphony that pushed him toward madness. "Let's go, now!" He grabbed Mike's shoulder, desperate to break the spell of horror binding them. But it was too late. The shadows surged forth, merging and collapsing into writhing shapes, then lunged. Jack lunged, pulling both Mike and Linda as they turned to flee, all too aware that the darkness snarled behind them. Branches whipped at them, like hands reaching out, trying to pull them back into the abyss. The screams and laughter morphed into a single entity, echoing everywhere, consuming them whole. They dashed through the trees, breathless terror fueling their flight. "Over here!" Jack shouted, diverting toward a barely visible path. Hope sparked, pulling them with deception. Their feet flew over the uneven ground, heartbeats thundering in rhythm with palpable fear. But as they carved deeper into the woods, Jack's heart sank as the air shifted. The darkness thickened, pressing against him like a vice. "What's happening?" Mike gasped, glancing back, his wide eyes filled with panic. "I don't know." Jack struggled to control his voice. "Just keep running." But shadows danced ahead, swirling as if alive, mocking them in their escape. Each movement felt deliberate, like gravity shifting towards something far worse than fear. As they crested a small hill, the trees opened up into a clearing. Jack stopped short, nearly colliding with Linda. Bile rose in his throat. Before them sat an ancient structure, ruined and overrun with creeping vines, a monument to despair. A shudder went through him, recognizing the bleak, festering energy radiating from it. "What is that place?" he whispered. But as he spoke, the laughter returned, echoing from the stones. They were not safe. Not here, not ever. Jack turned to face Linda and Mike, their eyes wide with fear. "We need to find a way out, now!" Suddenly, the ground beneath them trembled, cracks snaking across the earth, the clearing yawning open to reveal an abyss below. Darkness surged upward, hungry and relentless. "What the hell?" It pulled them forward, out of control. No more choices, no more running. They were falling, slipping into the very depths of fear itself. And as they did, the chilling voice returned, creeping through the air, fogging their minds with dread. You've awakened the dark. Welcome to your new fate. The last thing Jack saw was the twisting shadows of the long-forgotten as they descended into the void, leaving him to wonder if they had walked into the trap willingly, or if they were simply the next victims of a terror that transcended human understanding. The world spun around them, a chaotic blur of shadows and swirling darkness as they fell. Gravity pressed in on Jack, and it felt as though the abyss was reaching up with icy fingers, seeking to pull him further into its depths. For a moment, he dreamed of the safety of home, of warm smiles and bright lights, but that faded as terror gripped him. Then they hit the ground. The impact stole the breath from him and left a bruising memory of the fall. Cracked earth met Jack's palm, the roughness biting into his skin. He'd landed on something hard and unfamiliar. Struggling to his feet, he scanned their surroundings. They were no longer in the woods. Instead, they found themselves in a desolate underground chamber, dimly lit by the flickering of a pale flame that danced in the corner. The smell of damp stone and decay hung heavy in the air. Where are we?" Mike's voice trembled as he pulled himself upright beside Jack. He looked wild-eyed, his hair disheveled and dirt-streaked, much like Linda. I don't know," Jack replied, adrenaline still coursing through his veins. "But we need to move. We need to find a way out." Ahead of them was a stone archway, where the flickering light beckoned ominously. Shadows flickered just beyond, darting like spirits teasing them to step into the unknown. Maybe we should go back?" Linda suggested, her voice shaking.
Back to what? Jack snapped. The fear turned into anger. We can't go back. We need to keep moving. As they approached the archway, whispers slithered through the air. A soft, intoxicating murmur. The words were indistinguishable, yet inviting, the tones wrapping around them like a dark embrace. "Did you hear that?" Linda shivered. "Yes," Jack breathed, "but don't listen to it. It wants to lure us in." He stepped through the archway, his heart pounding harder with each pulse. As they crossed, an icy gust rushed past them, carrying the whispers to a fevered pitch. It clawed at their minds, sowing seeds of trepidation and doubt. "What if this is all a mistake?" Mike murmured, hesitating. "What if we shouldn't have come here?" "Too late to think about that now," Jack barked back. "We need a plan, together." They had to be united, despite the gnawing fear. But the chamber was a web of unseen threats. As they moved deeper, figures began to form in the shadows, faces contorted in agony, mouths wide as if screaming bloody curses. Jack's heart raced. They were trapped. "Where do we go?" Linda asked, panic rising in her voice. Before Jack could respond, the ground shook violently, and the chamber groaned like a dying beast. The stone walls shimmered, the archway behind them vanishing. They were sealed in. "No!" Jack shouted, backing away toward the flickering flame. The whispers crescendoed, swirling around him like a storm, filling him with despair. "We can't be stuck here. We have to find a way." Suddenly, a pale figure emerged from the shadows, transparent yet eerily present. It pointed at them, lips moving, forming words that echoed hollowly in the chamber. "You've come at last." "Who are you?" Jack shouted, stepping forward, fists clenched. "What do you want from us?" Smoke swirled around the apparition, a cruel smile spreading across its face. "Awakening the dark had consequences. You are but threads in a tapestry woven of despair." Before Jack could comprehend, the floor split open again, revealing a trapdoor surrounded by flickering light. His instincts roared. They had to jump. The shadows danced closer, drumming an unholy rhythm. "Jump!"
he yelled, pulling Linda and Mike toward the light. As they plunged into the gap, fear surged, pulse racing. Darkness swallowed them again, but this time they weren't falling. They were being drawn into something incomprehensible. And amidst it all, Jack heard a chilling whisper cut through the void. You can't escape your fate. What awaited them on the other side? Would they find salvation, or was this the start of a deeper nightmare? They landed softly, the sensation a stark contrast to the harshness of their fall just moments before. As they pushed themselves up, Jack's heart thundered painfully in his chest. Around them, the new chamber was cold and dark, an endless void of stone and shadow. A wooden beam creaked above their heads, and the smell of dampness mingled with something sickly in the air. It made Jack's stomach churn.
Are we? Linda's frantic voice pierced through the heavy silence. I don't know, but we need to keep moving, Jack replied, eyes darting, trying to grasp anything familiar. Panic gripped him. They could not stay still. They turned to their left, where flickers of light danced on the far wall, illuminating a peculiar door, etched with intricate engravings that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. Is that it? Is that the way out? Mike pointed, desperation injecting tremors into his voice. The door looked ancient, worn down by time. It whispered secrets, tugging at the edges of their minds. Let's just hope it's not a trick, Jack muttered, moving forward tentatively. As they approached, the whispers from the previous chamber resumed, more pronounced now, swirling through the air around them. Enter, learn, pay the price. They were like snakes slithering through Jack's thoughts, threatening to entangle his resolve. I can't take this, Linda breathed, stepping back, her eyes wide with terror. We shouldn't open it. What if it's worse than this place? Worse? Jack's voice rose, forcing a sense of assurance. We just fell into a pit of shadows. It can't be worse. With a deep breath, he reached for the door, his fingers brushing against the cold wood. The moment he touched it, the engravings glowed faintly, pulsating under his fingertips. The whispers crescendoed, growing louder, as if urging him on. Do it, Mike whispered, stepping closer, his voice low. Fine. On 3, Jack said, determination tightening his grip. He counted down, and with a final push, he yanked the door open. Darkness poured out like a thick fog, engulfing them in an overwhelming wave of dread. Jack! Linda exclaimed as the shadows enveloped their body, wrapping around them like a vice. Stepping inside, they were instantly met with a chill unlike anything they'd ever felt. The air crackled with an energy that sent shivers down their spines. They stumbled forward into the heart of the darkness, and as their eyes adjusted, images began to materialize in the gloom. A gallery of horrors etched into the wall, twisted faces staring back, reflections of pure despair. What is this? Mike shouted, as figures danced along the walls, reenacting their own unfathomable nightmares. Jack's pulse quickened as he recognized one, his face twisted in a scream, his eyes filled with terror. There's no turning back now, Jack said, fighting to steady his breathing. A loud crack echoed, and the chamber shuddered violently, throwing them backward. One of the tormenting faces from the walls broke free, stepping into the light. It was a mirror of Jack, with hollow eyes, smirking in sadistic glee. It's time to confront who you truly are, it hissed, moving closer. Get back, Jack yelled, scrambling to shield Linda and Mike. The air thickened with despair, their fear feeding the darkness. But the figure laughed, a chilling sound that filled the space, reverberating with a foreboding weight. You wanted to escape your fate, but it awaits you in every shadow, in every choice. We have to run, Linda cried, snapping Jack from his paralysis. They turned, bolting back through the door, shadows clawing at their heels. As they fled, they were met with an unforgiving corridor stretching before them, lined with doors that beckoned them like sinister eyes. A haunting realization hit Jack. Each door held a piece of their past, a dark secret waiting to be revealed. What awaited them if they chose incorrectly? As they raced down the corridor, whispers once more filled the air. Choose wisely, or be devoured by what you've denied. The pull of terror thickened, leaving them with a chilling question buzzing in their minds. Which door would they dare open, and which one would seal their fate forever? The air around them felt alive, pulsating with an unseen force as they skidded to a halt. Jack's heart raced. Doors loomed on both sides, each one a promise of salvation or doom. Glistening shadows danced along the edges, whispering secrets that chilled them to their core. "We can't stand here," Mike shouted, panic lacing his voice. "Which one?" Jack glanced at Linda, who trembled beside him, eyes darting from door to door, her breathing shallow. "Any of them could lead us to safety," Jack reasoned, his throat dry. "Or something worse." "Do we really have a choice?" Linda whispered, her voice barely audible over the pulsing whispers. They could hear it now, a faint echo beyond the doors, intertwining with the sinister laughter of the figure they'd just escaped. "You must choose. You must choose." Jack felt the weight of the darkness creeping closer, clawing at the edges of his mind. He stepped up to the nearest door, its surface splintered and scarred. "Let's try this one." "No!" Linda exclaimed, shaking her head. "What if it's a trap?" "Do you have a better idea?" Jack snapped, feeling the tension snapping like a tightrope. He threw open the door, revealing a dim room filled with old, rotting furniture. A heavy and familiar scent of decay rushed at them, filled with ghosts of dust and forgotten memories. Jack stepped in, his gut twisting. The walls were lined with mirrors, each reflecting flickers of their past. But they weren't just memories. They were visions of failure, each mirrored face twisted in despair. A version of himself, eyes hollow and haunted, grinned back. "This isn't right," he shouted, taking a step back, but the door swung shut, sealing them inside. "Jack," Mike yelled, panic rising, "get us out of here!" "Stay together," Jack commanded, though his voice trembled. Each reflection brought forward visions of choices they regretted. Linda standing alone, abandoned by friends. Mike's face darkened with sorrow, memories of family torn apart. Fingers clawed at his mind, urgency gnawed at his soul. "We have to find a way to fight this," Jack declared, stepping toward the closest mirror. "Don't!" Linda cried, but it was too late. Jack reached forward, his hand pressing against the cold glass. A jolt of energy shot through him, causing him to gasp in agony. Pain twisted through his chest as the reflection morphed, pulling him closer to an abyss he could barely comprehend. "Jack!" Linda screamed. "Fight it! You can break free!" Mike shouted, but their voices drowned in the cacophony of regret surrounding him. Jack felt the shadows swirl around him, dragging him into his own nightmare. "No!" he cried, desperate to resist. Images of his past morphed into a storm, threatening to swallow him whole. He was losing himself to the darkness. Suddenly, Linda lunged, pushing against the mirror beside him. "Stop! You don't have to do this!" Jack turned his head to see her face, fierce and determined. Her strength ignited something in him, pulling his thoughts back from the abyss. The murmurs of despair began to recede as he re-established his grip on reality. He stepped back, breaking contact. The mirror flickered, warping the sinister reflection. "We're not giving in!" he shouted defiantly. Yet, on the other side of the reflection, the figure that haunted them grinned wider, eyes glowing with malice. "You think you can escape? This is just the beginning." With one desperate glance between them, Linda yelled, "Let's get out of here!" They pushed toward the door, gripping hands as they rushed to escape the impending doom. Bursting through the door, they stumbled back into the corridor, the darkness swirling with impatience. But now the walls echoed with new whispers, filling the air with an even more dreadful promise. Your choice has only begun. You cannot run from what you truly are. They paused, hearts racing, faced with the next door looming ahead, a forbidding darkness spilling out. How could they know if it was any better than what they had just escaped? Nervously, they shared a glance, and the uncertainty clawed at Jack's mind. "We can't keep running," he panted. "We need to try another door." But deep down, a chilling thought emerged. What if another door led them straight to their own making of monsters? What if the true horror wasn't the doors themselves, but what they held within? Which door would they open next? As they deliberated, a low growl emanated from the shadows behind them, echoing with threat. "Choose, or be devoured." The cold crept closer, preparing to erupt. Jack's heart thundered as he felt the growl reverberate through him. The oppressive darkness pressed in on all sides, eager for their panic to consume them. They had no other choice. They had to break this cycle. "That one!" he yelled, pointing at a door at the far end of the corridor, confident desperation fueling his movement. "Are you sure?" Mike's voice trembled, and Jack understood his fear. Every choice had pushed them closer to despair. "It's now or never!" With a deep breath, Jack yanked the door open. Light spilled out, bright and blinding, immediately washing over them and driving back the shadows that crept through the hall, flushing chaos to the corners. They stumbled inside, momentarily dazed by the sudden illumination. The room was vast, filled with thousands of mirrors, but they didn't reflect distorted faces this time. Instead, they unveiled a world that seemed strangely vibrant. A beautiful, golden road stretching endlessly, lined with blooming flowers, under a sun that radiated warmth. Yet, lurking beneath the surface was an unsettling sensation. Jack's gut twisted. "Is this real?" Linda murmured, all shining in her eyes, but doubt lingered. "It feels too good to be true." "Keep moving," Jack urged, pushing through the threshold. Every fiber of his being scrambled alert. The trio walked cautiously, their footsteps echoing off the solid, polished surface of the road. With every step, the warmth felt intoxicating, a perfume of hope that seemed to fill their lungs. Yet a creeping shadow loomed near the edges of their vision, like a reluctant specter holding back. "What if it's another trap?" Mike whispered nervously. "Then we'll face it together," Jack said firmly, locking eyes with Linda. "But we can't hesitate." As they pressed further, both old and new fears clashed within them, an internal battle that left sweat on Jack's brow. It felt unreal, the doubts clawing at them. But the flowers, they were lush and colorful, vibrant petals swaying gently under an unseen breeze. "Look," Linda exclaimed, pointing toward a glimmer in the distance. "That could be a way out." They saw it now, a shimmering portal, pulsating with a brilliant light that seemed to call to them with siren enthusiasm. But as they approached, that dark shadow began rising again, lurking at the threshold, tainting the warm light with a chill. "No," Jack shouted, sensing the encroaching darkness. "We can't let it win." But stepping toward the portal felt like stepping into a storm. An electric charge sparked in the air. A whirlwind of emotions engulfed them. "Jack, it's too much," Linda shrieked, fear etching deep lines on her face. Just then, the shadow burst forth, morphing into the sinister figure they had fled from, its triumphant laughter testing every ounce of their courage. "You've come far, but you cannot reach the light. You will always be bound to the darkness that lurks inside you." Jack's breath caught, and his resolve felt shaken. Everything they had done, every regret, every choice led them here. But amidst that despair, a realization bloomed. They had the power over their own destinies. "We won't let you take us," he shouted, standing tall in defiance, his voice emboldened. "You're nothing but a fear we've given life to." The figure faltered, hesitation flickering across its dark features. In that precious moment, Jack felt Linda and Mike beside him, their determination igniting their combined strength. "We believe in each other," he declared, "and we choose to move toward the light." The shadow twisted angrily, knowing its hold had weakened. Jack, Linda, and Mike charged toward the portal together, pouring every ounce of hope and courage into their voices and hearts. "Together!" they cried, breaking through the dividing line between shadow and light. As they crossed through the portal, blinding light enveloped them, swallowing the darkness whole, consuming every gnawing fear and regret. They felt weightless, as if the burdens that had chained them to the past
fell away like ashes in the wind. They tumbled out the other side, landing in a vast field under an open sky. Birds soared overhead, chirping tunes of freedom, and the sun shimmered brightly, washing over them with warmth and clarity. They looked around, breathless. "We did it," Linda murmured, tears of joy streaming down her cheeks. "Yeah," Mike said, shaking his head, smiling wide. "We faced it together." Jack exhaled deeply, relief washing over him like a wave. "But we have to remember, we can't forget what we faced. The shadows will always be there. It's our choices that keep them at bay." As they clasped hands, a gentle wind breezed through the field, a reminder that though darkness might lurk, they held the power to turn toward the light, the power to choose hope over despair. They walked back toward the horizon together, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead, knowing they were stronger together. And as the sun dipped below the earth, they felt its lingering warmth, their fears extinguished, but their journey only just beginning. Now, all of you watching, this is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss exclusive stories like this one. Smash that like button with all your power. Help feed the algorithm so others can find these tales. And flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about tonight's haunting conclusion. Finally, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this chilling yet uplifting finale. Your support keeps the dark tales alive.